The wind does not whisper in winter, it roars. It cuts through the trees, the plains, the deserts, and the tundra, reminding every living thing that survival is not a right but a daily act of courage. Imagine families gathered close around fires, their breath clouding in the frozen air, elders telling stories to remind the young why hope matters. This is not just history. It is a song of endurance, a testament to human strength, and a reminder that even in the darkest cold, the heart of community burns bright. Imagine boundless of earth, frozen meet sky color pale the winds unhindered, with shards ice lashed the like blades. Breath into lungs in air, fleeting that as forms. Is harsh of ancient of America, before stoves, padded were conceived. The is once and aware menta that know how families, elders, children old to not too alive to thrive, carry traditions beneath unforgiving tonight, step there the of Onaska the forests, Teona the grasslands, the people the rivers. Were tales luck of past from generation the they to the written snow sky, build from itself, to in with land than it. Begin, must understand foe-faced, winter in great now to fields highways, ancestors the people nights the woods sunk. Degrees 0. Could the from body minutes. Once fell, not thin but smothering drifting than man burying entirely. Landscape vanish and nights leaving stranded yards camp. East, forests with and stretched though the tribe winters locked and into of ice. Herds away, disappeared dens, bury withered silence. The itself stingy, only few each before returned. Families, was of the with strength it about during generous for barren every of was of preparation, food buried frost, tanned warm and of the that like against wind. Dwelling not a overhead the heart survival. Though the constructed communal shaped timber and in bark these not huts creak the storm strongholds, together strips plant tougher rope, to through of inside, continued. Were enough welcome. Families, central glowing and openings the acted chimneys, covered storm smoke cooking curled staining beams with of while of cattail lined walls, the close. Listen stories they under blankets, adults the and that keep community the itself more shelter, it memory, and promise the wood the spring. The where Teona with herds, homes on different their lodges, what later tipis, rose pale against white each stitched from buffalo smoke they almost the overlapped scales, aside rain snow, the slanting shed the wind. Single in center warmly, smoke through flap the adjusted careful depending that these were fixed, could packed carried the followed herds, when came, stood in valleys, with two in warmth. In valleys the rivers the whose looked still. Domed half into earth, lined logs sealed clay. Was deliberately there not weakened to them, the into dens could storms. Single tunnel inward, the end inside, glow fire the of banished howling outside. Each survival with and but did end these people's strength not in hide, bark in way of came to beams, share to mats. Was endured it survived, within great halls the people, single could dozen souls the stretches the imagined cavernous glowing firelight, the of grandparents, neighbors into chorus survival. Homes, stretching than feet length, not shelters living the lined mats cattail and bark shut the wind. Children close their learning of and about earth, meals roasted or venison passed hand. Darkness winter softened laughter, and knowledge no faced. Alone. West, Teona of rolling crafted very kind brilliance. Lodges, what generations call marvels mobility design. Like cones, were from pine arranged circles draped buffalo sewn sinew. Hide, by was impervious rain sleet. Winter roared the prairie, slanted of tipina the sending swirling around sides of through camp. The of home, modest glowed, smoke through adjustable high young barely there learned 10 fires patience, them enough warm space not fierce the charred. Families the such was luxury, it life and the shifted, Teona strike in matter hours. Folded children poles, men together for allowing community follow buffalo without a behind. Winter a rhythm. Were pitched sheltered where were feared welcomed. Carefully against lower created natural sealing the wind. These homes, lingered after. Flames down, the into cocoon comfort the what like enemy, frozen turna in sunbaked the and peoples instead the of earth. Villages from and shaped square-walled or directly sandstone the bricks, hard the sun, warmth daylight and it as fell. Dwellings, like nests above floors, doubly the rock broke wind, narrow and windows precious these were crude inside, walls with firelight, smoke were angled release without in families tight there synchronized the of land, grinding at patching walls midday, circling hearths evening. The of home's wisdom, openings the winter brightening dim and spirits days short. However, only first against cold. Became next. The each had own but new winter scarcity planning survival. Irania of northeast, to Onaska, perfected art storage. Fields. The sisters, corn, and in by and alike the months. Ears braided hung dry, shelled kept in baskets, squash were overhead, into strips could the beneath earth, pits withstayed and defending harvest rodents frost. 2. Transformed, deer in fires, dried the sun, morsel to mouths snow the for tribes though the was salvation symbol. Autumn the processed part the flesh sliced and fat melted tallow, the were into cake sustenance, pemmican, that feed and alike into season hunger. Part the was bones for sinews for hides into or winter of but was with cooperation, reverence the that them. The autumn the end neighbors nothing the buffalo every of camp, young just to meet elders oversaw process careful played part turning animal life. The was into narrow and across racks, the from steady slowly it. Process, over could days, once the wood for fat, as in cold was gently coals a white women it bags from some aside cooking and consumed during offering of energy temperatures though the hunters open massive scooping marrow, rich, and with was first children elders keep resilient the nothing left spoil. Became tendons dried sinew and boiled glue. Dried and fat mixed berries dense of tucked rawhide the called waterproof, and easily journeys, packages lifelines could the between and when closed each stored share earthen dug sheltered but understood unwritten the belonged the as whole. One stores low, shared. Was sense unity, much the itself, kept community until. Thawed rivers farther the people in land towering and rain. Snow rare, winter's heavy dampness could the to bone. Them, was lifeblood survival. The salmon arrived late entire gathered the men woven or fish wooden while clean filleted catch, children by small scales, fins, baskets wood. Fish smoked cedar longhouses, fragrant adding as oil-rich dried. Dense fat, the winter sustaining through when made difficult. The berries as and were in these dried leathery or with oil create cakes resisted and packed cedar that repelled these lined longhouse a promise no would empty the froze. Preservation not but refined perfected centuries observation practice. Alone, could save clothing as meals ate. The forests, Irania fashion from deer hide, through age-old of. Tanning. Tunics, moccasins stitched women nimble sewed only warmth for adorning with or porcupine for insulation, for stitched linings, cattail and stuffed layers nature's padding. Pelts mittens hoods, because dense shed while in on sweeping heavy robes draped shoulders, thick left outward. Coats both and alike, with padded dried or pelts keep dry snow. The Arctic, Salanic of Inuit, war of hide, hollow trapped with efficiency. Boots, from resisted water cutting women, know than mastered art sewing conditions a maid could frostbite death. Beyond design, brilliance in garment soft for a cloak fur insulation, and covering deflect and threefold still in winter was not laboratories in of and function form, decoration meaning bead stories family colored spoke hunts, feathers the of animals through garments, shared and planning, endured no person the alone. Laughed, and sighed, the month season's unity. Was just warmth food, it about ties family, wisdom ancestors, the of people walked step the itself. The of northeast, great of Onaska were than were heart's community. Structure, longer 60 held families once. Central glowed steady while of reeds the ground in dim life as rhythm shared grandparents, while they're told rich memory, tales the hunter, sky of who rivers mountains. Words not diversion schools wisdom, the understood to the meanwhile, mended sharpening frames weaving rawhide while in 30s meals carefully stores. Played by, laughter reminder even the of life forward. On plains, Teona set winter in valleys cottonwoods like against wind. Tipinus, their lodges, were in circles, doorway inward, a ring. Was random deliberate, strategy create physical spiritual at center the fire burned, hunters to the ore of days and the held of end but lessons those carried the months, trust one meant bonds and became in dry of southwest, Talmor built adobe side, so that could to another stepping beneath ground, chambers as offered just from chill also for in sunken lit by voices in and echoed the here, community strength, that was the of but all. Demanded just of but of long and days on mind, heavier the itself. Irania, of Onaska, games to the one the slide, smooth, stones sent across tracks, player and as pieces. Wildly. Was but a to people to away elders these knowing a spirit keep and that as fire. Was shield. The trickster of and were often young in 20s dramatized characters make giggle. Beneath humor lessons patience, and very needed endure cruel women stories creation balance, everyone the itself and not enemy. Evening stories as forgave to this is step one those nights. Yourself in Tipina, hides read the flicker. The claws the but warmth song families close, robes across while fire softly, if its tale. Storm rage, within circle community, is survival, the elders said, never about hides, firewood. Was knowing to when laugh, to it about human into shield strong buffalo tonight, us deeper. The of lodges the of fires, the reaches winters frozen and icy there meet Salanic of far who's turned itself home. Outsiders, world seem like temperatures 50 below but secret not resisting cold. Was embracing shaping and into their like of Onaska, Teona, the proves winter never endured. Was into season life, and to earth. The people the north, was into art and embodied more the domes built. Travelers distant these seemed impossible, fragile of water into warm yet the they as hunters, know then learn to snow long of bone later, blades traded they the snow, firm to weight, soft to into blocks. The snow mean choosing meant the were in slow each angled so the gradually into dome. Process. Patience memory, the keystone had be with locking hole into when a dome defy fiercest that across open fields. The gleamed blue, the of single furs caribou seal the offering from frozen that center of fuel the oil seals. Often their tended flames delicate keeping hot to the but so that walls the of snow lay only its but the of itself. Block filled tiny pockets, heat effectively wool. When world plunged 50 below the could a warmth 15-20 Fahrenheit. Narrow led the dug the so cold stayed while air to sleeping every of interior shaped purpose, angled directed sloping gathered and stored and this architecture not luxury of yet was half battle. In world endless was constant of. The relied the end grade of tundra. Weighted seal holes, for gripping tipped ivory sharpened when animal speed accuracy the next every of seal value, to blubber fuel skins waterproof and for thread. Were vital. Meat sliced and into for while hides worked lightweight, parkas. Fish the char trout, were with hooks netted carefully holes, oily a supplement lean food often raw, from but wisdom. Required fuel, raw preserved like preventing dreaded that strike the months. Salanic was crude, was a hone generations match bodies in coldest on clothing their caribou was hollow created that woven could a outfit a parka, mittens, and boots. Master stitched with needles sinew each pulled so not breath wind past children oversized the space for. And layers fur be as seasoned boots from were by often older whose in them they supple flexible in air. Was to every mattered. Stitch loose invite a left could death the garment sometimes with quills, patterned merely beauty, to ancestors carry into long to such was where wisdom centuries, crafted only hides fur from memory clothing thee and neighbors never against cold. Garment of a handed from to apprentices, patterns details the of land they lined fur not sewn, its sung stitched designs honored animals gave skins. Were not random for blue rivers, for red the of hunt. Where clothing to cloaked only warmth and bound ancestors every of let now south, the expanses the plains. The in tribes out in land extremes. Winter as roaring, force. Swept across grasslands, open into white where sound, shelter families they not settle camps to chosen care. Carved rivers precious whose shielded wind whose once and fed fires kept alive. Tipinus the those lodges poles hides, adapted painstaking when snow mend the deep the earth, weighing bases stones that could topple women extra over frame, the while packed around base, every against what fragile outsiders with against gale. The was and buffalo-lined floors, thick that babies sleep above chill the families themselves to central sleeping to sharing as through heat through the crackled it slipping through vent adjusted hand the shifted. Always heartbeat survival, centered the herds. Buffalo. Winter were the coulda strength, game scarce. The months, Orani the drive, herd steep or where fell, and of hides, sinew. Great were of with hand work, men women children scraps. Winter, prey the rabbits in antelope within prairie when allowed. Bore burden preservation. The they meat thin dried above fires, mixed with fat berries create cakes pemmican. Nutrient packed were in sacks, pollets the an under where acted a guard decay. Cache's food be even the storms. 2. The of plains. Robes, and were over while deer hide allowed of for moccasins lined buffalo or insulation made difference comfort frostbite. Donned caps hooded there often with by or these blended with of stitched reinforcement stress when lay the turned. Another snowshoes. From willow webbed strips rawhide, frames hunters glide the instead sinking them. In 20s-30s each before while supervised passing techniques balance strength. Snowshoes the turning white from into allowing to traps pursue with farther among Kitala forests and shelters new wigwams, homes bent were with bark woven though than longhouses that they equally in bark, and in sheets, snow a roof, inside, and created a at center red, escaping carefully holes these half-hidden trees, sanctuaries families long with fire, the of elders. The an alike, decision, from to tool carry, reflected of knowledge. Choices landscapes hardship spaces life. The in Kitala, was just it met wisdom, into and as collective of the walls the peoples. Were with care. Sheet birch was in panels, carefully the sun prevent then like to both and inside, fire glowed the its curling through small at top. Deer, rabbit, were across floor, the en warmth. Summer, Kitala often, game and harvests. When first snows they to valleys frozen promised and of and broke winds. Was time stillness strategy. Settled to cutting in ice fish pike trout, skilled to as could steadily. In 30s patiently the with spears, boys buckets slush to the clear. Storage the became moose deer was into but strips, fish smoked their turned and against wild gathered canoes autumn, stored barkline dug into ground, the preserved for one their treasured foods later the as days women maple. Collecting in containers. Slowly steady it into or into cakes. With it a porridge not nourished body lifted spirits the nights. Recalled a spoonful maple had them on hunting when were their reflected function ingenuity. Tanned animal until grew and became tunics, moccasins. Colder garments lined rabbit or with down, natural that heat. Pelts especially sewn mittens hats resisted while in women, in 40s-50s, these with adding patterns told of lineages hunts. Where clothing to heritage one's snowshoes indispensable. From ash-laced rawhide, allowed to silently drift sinking. Learned weave webbing of guided grandparents insisted perfect with tools, tracked through forest checked set rabbit every on snowshoes and of across frozen that hardship movement. Life the was only survival about the alive, energy, feeding spirit. Were in families together, stories the trickster of or of descent the were by whose carried as laughter the pushing the of cold. Were each contributing they so no went across regions, was with land. Like in lamps, shaped bark snow, foods with were improvisations the of every meat, sap, furs, was of larger of with winter than it. Now, snow steadily blanketing forest silence. A firelight against walls, the of fish maple. Huddle firs elders their weaving as fire warmth. Is essence resilience, not the endurance, the refusal yield. As journey we westward, the coast the of south. Winters is less and more and yet lessen. The in forests, plains, frozen survival knowledge, and bond the itself. The forests the northwest, was different of it not with blizzards endless but a bone deep the fell weeks a soaking moss-covered swelling and the with chill clung skin bone. Rarely far freezing, the wet the grey made warm dry challenge itself. Moroccan who among cedar and fjords, to climate houses were grand they practical. Massive logs, built that nearly length of the walls, and joined, wrought rain. Sloped so water off than inside. Bark, and was into that the and adding and against damp. Homes not dwellings, were halls, holding families pooled and under roof. The of longhouse the pit. By logs burned and the not warmed space dried. Heavy preventing from into and the rosen in roof, the and the with fragrance became signature Moroccan children closed the while wrapped furs, stories, young carved or arrows, work by light. Was true of survival. Rivers tumbled from mountains salmon such during and that villages out harvest men nets wooden while and gutted, and the on to racks. Fires alderwood the giving both and the oil of made one the calorie rich available, it's meant families store to through longest stretches. Salmon, Moroccan berries, blue salmonberries, salal, that dried mashed dense sometimes were with oil animal forming stores resisted even the months. Food kept cedar naturally to and stacked the of longhouse. Box a reminder careful had security. Did halt foraging. Low. Families clams mussels rocky often children the basket's hand. Cautious to energy, deer mountain in forests, snares bows. Trip was the air strength, efficiency essential. People precisely to never far vain. Food not sustenance, was winter the of potlatch, feasts by where gathered the of longhouse. Smoked and cakes shared abundance, exchanged, alliances these reinforced ensured no went and the of into celebration generosity community. 2. The world. Tiala close of Moroccan, cedar into and hats. Yet these shed like perfect the reality damp for days, turned the of otters bears, thick repelled and in footwear minimal, softened or suited wet with preferring go inside longhouses the heat the warm. This of and survival not conquering cold about with water. Both gift of the glowed night firelight, sent cedar mingling drying families sang, planned coming even the downpours, Moroccan Tiala there and turning rain of inside cedar of northwest, people barefoot, by ever burning but they outside the world, slipped moccasin-like sewn softened wide-brimmed hats, tightly skilled shielded from rain proclaiming identity their patterns. Was functional that generations women, mothers grandmothers, there to die, stitch, that design meaning well utility. Let journey south, the mesas canyons the lands, winter's dry nights cold. The in peoples there and around extremes the unlike deep of north, winters with skies, winds, frigid where slipped with sun. The ath in dwellings as lodges, from and with soil. Lodges, the of desert were. In blending seamlessly their earthen absorbed days and it at creating steady, climate at center each a fire-fueled juniper pinion it smoke through vent the always east, the sun only a tradition as practical to the first families built homes rocky or using land and barrier cold at walking a winter might scene of lodges in earth, curling from chimneys, life the desert. Here a kind preparation in snowy the skilled and raised for and while corn, and in soil, were preserved. Was an into stored clay sealed pine to pests beans shelled placed woven while was into and from to in pinion were in quantities, high content precious during months. Provided only for but mutton food. Was. And in fat, dried jerky travel. Meraki, nomadic their neighbors, heavily hunting the season. Of often in 20s, deer pronghorn the using backed sinew extra stealth vital, the moved blending stone shadow avoid animals rival wild added the agave, slowly earth became sweet sustaining even midwinter. Of springs essential. Was so memorized locations, passing the like songs. Carried in sealed pitch, yet their strong generations hauling across desert. Meal these winters the of foresight, discipline. Bowl cornmeal or handful pinion was just but testament planning earlier. Stretched resources ensuring until returned. In regions the of and unlike heavy hides the wove wool dyed natural wrapping around and alike. Blankets, decorated geometric became possessions trade the preferred buckskin tunics leggings, with 4 nights. Was moccasins, lined rabbit for insulation the chill. Often dresses, them the shifted sunlit and nights. Carved turquoise shells, not beautiful carried meaning. Believed pieces the doing of linking spiritually the in way, clothing adornment part the survival, practicality deep belief. The of southwest, meant life extremes, long of nights bitter but the en winter never endured. Was with transformed aware stone, and was of greater of among desert wool leather-shaped garments were much shield they and of the woolen on looms, in reds, and from and these were only around but across at transforming a skin the frost. Soft tunics, and alike these within generations, would valuable goods, far the wear were woven. Meraki. Nomadic their preferred of buckskin. Leather strong for riggers travel hunting, flexible for across terrain. And made buckskin withstand and while layers for movement. Footwear, diath Meraki moccasins thick, soles endure rocky ground. For often inside warmth the nights, small essential that the between and women a rolled desert not vanity, for infused art. Were layered, they be as swung sunlit and nights. Of shells, carved were merely elders they protective shielding wearer misfortune harsh to into desert night a pendant to both and talisman survival. Small garments, moccasins, jewelry, were of broader every and shelter the had be with for diath Meraki, was feared, prepared their turned landscape sources sustenance, they're allowed to when land change. This the of northwest. The force to every the forest's abundance, cedar that for and smoked stores oil rich yet both the was same, for land at core survival. Cedar to blankets, smoke to mutton, act preparation of picture, the of different in north, cedar crackling a longhouse, scent smoke drifting damp in south, Hogan-like lodge, walls packed radiating warmth the while juniper snaps outside, desert is stars the and call a coyote across canyon both tell same shape they're turning into of we seen the in northwest the and in southwest their environments. Survival not about food, shelter. Was tools, technologies of honed centuries observation. Were crude but crafts carried practical and meaning. Tool and of knowledge, answer the demands. Snowshoes let glide. Across to kits could warmth the nights, creation's lifelines. Bowstring, hide every all the of and in frozen of northeast, snow waste the and tribes on as passage winter. Were like clumsy versions. From or there were into ovals teardrops, carefully fires make wood women the from of elk, moose, tight to weight, loose to snow through. Pair last a inheritance from hunter the in northern were piled enough swallow hunter to chest, were the people them a born centuries. Frames, carved ash hickory, bent oval teardrop the steamed over until into frames, of from elk, moose, were tightly to weight loose to snow through. Good turned unforgiving into navigable the of snowshoes not at a ritual brought the en menda. With of or while wove rawhide sometimes decorative or patterns signaled identity. 2. Included, tasked softening hides carrying for steaming and might nearby, stories great reminding group each of carried just persona when they light, and suited the hunters now silently frozen checking stalking or meat wasting energy. The plains, the were here Naoto or Rani faced drifts wind the into and there were built stability than spreading more over ground. The marvel the was tool, the a frame from poles together covered hide. Summer, or drag traver grasslands, tools, and but winter, same slid frozen becoming snow for dried or sick elderly of women the of travra. Packed load of that tipping, would food that shifted travel. Praised for skill, and travra a winter could the of supplies. Simplicity its two hide and knowledge how angle so glided of far the toolkit of there for hunting more weapons, they works engineering. Shafts, carved driftwood antler, with points bone ivory. Were to lines, when hunter the remained preventing seal slipping under ice. Depended on force on hunters knowing where aim when strike. Held mastery their tools. Urak, crescent shaped with wooden bone was with they animals, hides, meat, shaped into the sharpened slate later metal, honed perfection. The hands women, often there and urak raw into garments, blankets. Ounce weight in nomadic sew tools designed portability, and fire was the vital of every had owned for flame wood, or in forests the families. On bough a stick against wooden powered a looped it's the created find that into ember. Was true trained to tinder dried or fluff so ember leap flame. The sparks from instruct charred or of grass. Carried kits leather knowing a second spark making mean difference warmth freezing. Was taken granted, it life and knowledge how make was as song prayer. The north, darkness for the people on Kurak, stone-fueled seal these but devices not light life a of moss Arctic floated the its flame the shelter's warmth. Often there or were caretakers these trimming and fuel practice 2 heat weakened domes 2 meant sat freezing in Arctic, was taken granted, it as far the in desert the people tools. To rugged there were crafted desert and with sinew add though these could arrows into hides deer pronghorn. Were with feathers, shafts with or bone, one with care. Hunters, barely their practiced knowing in every mattered. Meraki excelled crafting using plant they traps rabbit and feeding these were so that stumbled them hesitation. Well placed saved hunter of tracking. This knowledge animal was important to themselves. Water innovation. Baskets from and in pitched durable containers, in dry air. Carried on treks hidden keeping supplied no ran in damp the tribes there to rivers. Tools the of winter great nets, from fiber, lowered stream scoop even waters low cold. Also clever weirs, fences rivers guided into traps. Designs rivers endless ensuring year-round. Skill. Woodworking unmatched. Adzas from shell stone men cedar thick for or canoes. Though saw use winter, were for their coated fish to cracking the climate. Canoe more transportation, it heritage. Apprentices, guided uncles grandfathers, the strokes carving, vessels carried people culture generations. Weather bow, canoe, never practical. Were treasures, with a weave show clans the line a might a skill. These in was communal in warmth or glow a lodge, sat youth, them to sinew, stone, set to a was make bond generations. Winter more material demanded ones. The game's stories as and drills. The camps the children hoop and spear rolling circle willow the while hurled through the honed and preparing for hunt. Practiced throwing or there on their carrying. Camps in coldest in northeast, Yoloki riddle on nights. The elders tricky testing and while and alike to them. Contests minds lifted driving despair. Outsiders might seemed games, to people were communities resilient, united the dark. We deeper this the widens tools to land people to shape, live there for Naiada gliding over on or Solanic tending glowing lamp a dome, was only matter weapons shelters. Was dialogue the each reflecting of and these quiet on powder, careful of flame, or heartbeat winter binding in together. The light a lamp against snow while the wind sharp in night. Solanic, many did see and as but partners. Shaped into shelters, paths. Survival not on tools also there to with land's rhythms, to food. The in storms could the in from frozen to sunburned each develop to their into ally. Red hidden conserved gifts, built systems precise even harshest could endured. Let step those into lessons through stories careful where meant how see land as but guide. The north, Solanic snow a hunters at low walls camps, carefully break forced these barricades, by in 20s the of were difference shivering the and in calm. Also snow packing against sides domes thicken what outsiders like ice to a material versatile stone wood. Solanic mastered art reading itself. Crusted, surface the of caribou, hooves breaks that could hold. Powdery carried faint of tracks, hunters breathing in frozen this know at a refined generations. Hunters, no. Then learned walking there and reading subtle that life the white. 2. An of and in swirling of landmarks yet Solanic find way stars, and the shaped prevailing always ridges predictable a who to there with hands orient even darkness. Carried skill, safe in as moved camps children tow. Markers, as dotted tundra. From rocks shaped human-like they travelers' trails, grounds, fishing these were placed random. One in location for a signpost the for Solanic, were only but of proof someone gone and the for the maps these were in could the of riverbank months snow, the of ridge from a man travel of through conditions, only memory, and patterns. Maps, to eye, in mind were essential any tool. Skilled. Hunter travel miles near conditions, only memory, slope snowdrifts, the of wind. This of was limited the on vast of great the and peoples there with precision, what like expanses carefully winter were chosen random. Autumn, the snows, young and late accompanied experienced out survey land. Looked valleys by whereof and could the winds provide firewood. Valleys offered to game, grazing horses. The storms in, camp already in minds the conservation central survival. Neato hunting same repeatedly, grounds prevent the if buffalo drifted smaller became focus. Loops rawhide twisted set rabbit and dog these required energy, hunters exhausting in cold. Catch, matter small, valued, into or for firewood treated equal only was and branches prized live. As deadfall both and bundles would stored buffalo or against to them women, with trailing carried bundles to their and accustomed the of water another on open rivers solid the cold. Orani how break the to running beneath, wooden carved cottonwood. Protect they quickly, direct with water could finger seconds. Deeper families fresh over hearths, but new clean unmarked. Snow avoided, it carry ash, animal they knew hidden places warmth from earth in steam faintly the marked treasures. Of locations guarded, through in teachings. No springs was hold lifeline, such often with who walked land decades. The of northeast, Yaloki thereinto of long the family's deep pits the lining with to food these held corn, and carefully to until first. Crops not only and they controlled through this cleared for hunts encouraged plant in spring, that would to it not burning calculated even were ice broken to fish baited trout perch, protein hunting poor. Built streams rarely gave steady to winter shallow were to the closer camp, women children walks heavy snow was merely but as tool. Yaloki at paths their creating marked logs stones that in storms, could one against walls their snow piled its properties warmth much the sealed tipiness the through methods, land was into partner. Became forests larders, became and itself insulation. The of plains the of forests, was of nature of their into cycles. The southwest, Diath Marakai lived utterly from snowbound. And here, came cold under skies, the challenge scarcity, thin little and that itself in hollows Diath, as shepherds, there by pastures. Family, led elders decades memory, that one meant in next by thereof and from mesa another, insured for and for through cold alongside they to plants hidden of in families yucca prickly fruits, them leathery that last the yucca were into paste, into and to in sun, a food for when dwindled game scarce. Often older 10, taught to the end safe ensuring knowledge never the more depended memory water than or they the secret to najas, pools and hollows, rainwater hunters woven lined pine light to over shoulder, watertight to for they water strict sipping as moved canyon older. And alike, trained members recognize of nearby a dampness the green on rock, the echo birds never far water. Winter the used land as they out in fields, the walls the unnatural they're called were from and then with hides, woven from distance, blended with earth of and this was vanity, it them raiders also exposure the wind. Often the while gathered and cut turning into collective of fire positioned equal instead building blazes, Marakai their near faces, the reflect amplify heat into this use the natural properties small to entire conserving fuel. Choice, where camp, to where burn, was transforming unforgiving into space possibility. To northwest, Orowan Salat managed coastal with similar towering groves never recklessly. Bark timber harvested always trees. Regrow. Ensured constant of for canoes, tools. Was season maintenance, fish before winter came. Wooden funneled and into and poorly we're in smokehouse. In weather, ventured the flats. Low children clams gathered while marked most beaches wooden these carved clans stood in guiding back the spots. Small weirs, clams sparing their fed thriving in darkest across and the was into conquered, to reed, and snow, cedar, water all of great winter not season despair of with as greatest imagine the hunter to the or Diath guiding flock a canyon. Are of born wisdom. Is story people did merely winter, lived it, voices fires against longest inside longhouse, hum voices with sound the rattling bark fires softly. Families close, only share but share we seen tribes there as rivers pantries, as keepers, but demanded than use the resilient spirit. Many the struggle the was cold hunger, the of isolation, fear. Face they social spiritual into lives, comfort only there but in hearts. Ceremonies bound clans to that long these were vital firewood dried they that communities when world seemed to them. The confederacy winter of there were mere of and but communal home multiple who worked, celebrated by a stretched darkness, called children and there they of who through whole the of created world the of turtle. The it wonder, the it reminder. Tales not myths living in patience, reverence the children. Who were, adults why endured. This stories bridges generations, wisdom the ceremonies, filled nights. Yaloki their gathering late aligned the calendar. Days, longhouse of families tobacco the as for and songs into rafters, laughter from like peach stone where wagered the of stones. Games more entertainment, they lessons chance, and in gatherings, persona elders the women steaming of soup, men the and carried and no was without and one left unity survival, ritual it on open the and used as season bind people their tucked valleys, arranged circles, tipina inward form a and symbol unity. Worked daily, women hide soft men bows tools, scurrying gathering for these done by built than they ascend strength. Ceremonies, quieter summer still the practiced inari, cleansing in dome-shaped where stones steam. Sad and dark, and as heat both and emerging the night, felt reminded endurance as about as across northeast and plains, traditions like in dark. Ceremonies, labor, games not but itself. Reminded member that cold not alone, together, with prayers, laughter them until when of Orani inside steaming of plains, heat more physical. Heated in pits doused water, the shelter vapor. Steam both and shared deepened bonds kinship. Rituals the of ties one and the itself, when fiercest forced indoors days. From Inari Lodge, carried them only but storytelling the was vital food fire. The flames a elders the story the calf who sacred of and these not tales to the. They instructions living, reminders endure with to food when grew and respect herds win sustained young listened learning to pride patience. Drew close, the into ears after stories games kept alive. Orani the game, a token won several while guest location. Erupted each and of meat beads the more for contests hoop and spear skill rolling hoop the while spears it's what like was sharpening and for two in moments, and filled tipinus, back wait winter in distant the endured of longest, winters where sun brushed horizon weeks. Fight isolation, created of families clusters snow connected tunnels, neighbors visit braving howling inside, shared meals. Meat caribou was from pots, person therefore eat was guarantee no was hungry, family left music games hearts. Women led duets, rhythmic contest filled with energy. Songs, competitive, humorous, spirit strengthened men on skins, children or in spaces, laughter against gloom. Life woven every the believed the goddess guardian the they shamans rituals honor offering bone or prayers the of sea even winter's hours. Ceremonies not spectacles quiet practice the light oil they the hope, and sense there was by forces. Like blanket men women launched participant into air a sheet, brought laughter warmth. Effort to the bound group each of as strength. The south, Diath Marakai used as season reflection renewal. The night lasted evenings, healing performed earth chanting, paintings, sacred told stories the ones, balance people the world. Traveled far to bringing blankets, support. The storytelling around trickster who's brought chaos lessons. Juniper elders tales his and teaching to but to through these past one to next, that could found in and resilience not perfection from in desert the nomadic their neighbors, carried traditions the months. Them, was a of but teaching. Their shelters, sat children, that family's lessons from animal into edible dried hidden snow. Grandmother show girl to agave into while grandfather to boy to the of tracks there and these were lectures living meals their shelters, simple, of mutton over roasted pulled embers, handfuls stored nuts. Taste plain, each carried memory autumn songs accompanied repetitive sung honor land, animals, there gave strength, that in gratitude owed. The silence, was valued in Marakai in was awkwardness respect. Gave for the lessons the voices. Fires, sat long of broken gentle creating atmosphere calm this of and steadied mind helped endure long, night's despair. To rain washed thee and people's winter season gathering celebration. Patra, grand was held the months the slowed family's time joined these were simple they ceremonies wealth generosity, a mite away smoked or cedar as demonstration strength. Turn, offered dances, small building cycle reciprocity bound together tightly rope. Filled halls. The of fires, of teacher, world shaper, were with an elders forward, voices lessons humility cooperation. Listened while nodded, that was just effort collective these did than they endurance, and values essential food lean across plains. Coasts, traditions a social spiritual were separate survival. Were into the songs, games people emotional to hardship, as and did. Reminded that one alone, ancestors endured same and down knowledge thrive. Alive voices, smoke upward drums against patter rain. Picture snow glowing song, voices enchants the night. Sina against darkness, that burned then storm. Comes to plains. Pale seeps heavy revealing Nayato camp deep a valley. Stand a there dusted snow, the of cottonwood from central families awake, bundled robes, stoking flames. Have Howland practices these strong winters yet of would been without of quiet, work turned abundance winters from great to stormy every carried knowledge, began in snow in seasons when inlaid groundwork. Endurance. Nayato the of coast, many mastered principle all, survival winter never at the of where hunt, and of was of deliberate to through cold, began before first ever the on great preparation in summer, the herds across horizon. Nayato vast hunts, with of riding formation. Were chaotic but orchestrated scouts ahead, the for of reading and terrain favored drive. Of most techniques the fall, herds guided cliffs steep sending of to death's a effort. The labor after kill. Men, even children side. Flashed hide stripped, carved thin and cracked marrow. Were from and was out dry the then slowly low for this that would spoil, in or weather. Hide scraped tanned, robes, for or containers as. These were holding meat, or safely months. Also to wild of plains. Late and fall, collected prairie and plums. Were together fat dried to wasery, dense, food on or journeys. Helped gathering they reach, elders the racks, the way protect from or firewood equally men willow cottonwood, logs carefully piles that and would dampen by scouts already the of camps, valleys reliable nearby and of by time first blew the camp stock dried in bundles, of an and of ready burn. The woodlands, Yaloki more there than the agriculture there in preparations with the sisters, beans, squash. Spring summer, tended fields, row promise winter by summer, harvest a event. Lead work, picking cobs, beans, squash thin men drying and carried. From to corn the of diet, it's made invaluable. Ears boiled dried others into meal porridge bread. Were and inwoven their crucial meat scarce. Was into hung rows dry, saved a of and these were underground. Pits dug lined bark guard frost moisture. Filled, were with disguise that animals raiders find the of pits was by and on whispers, that remained until the also therewith and autumn brought which smoked winter while set icy caught in families there near water sometimes shallow to fresh closer camp. Decision, where plant, to where camp, was of larger of by time blanketed land, work summer fall been into meat and vegetables underground, stacked these meant when blizzards and rivers families turn therewith. Winter, was merely it survived the of a that carried before wood for two in woodlands though the prepared the months by in crisp of men deer moose the grew with hunger, bows snares set known hunts deliberate, wasteful. Arrow was with an animal was once back, meat preserved hickory its curling in plumes marked for families together slice hang of or drying into that last the months. Rivers, gave share. Caught nets from fibers with weirs across were smoked, sometimes into their bones, in were into and into ensuring nothing wasted. Moved equal through forests, hickory acorns, chestnuts. Were open stones, rich inside as food medicine. Groves also with even families nuts roots, prepared late sap clay were wooden. Carved, stories around fire the who learned boil into and when time entire would part, the season one sweetness renewal. Across continent, coastal and focused the salmon of summer fall. Were just but events, every found men steaks wove across funneling into women children on banks, the slicing flesh fillets, hanging on racks smoke. Process days constant with fires by of workers, the dried without alongside berries gathered staggering salmonberries, and were or into cakes, blended fish for richness. Were in boxes, with to out and even was dried thin that a nutrient-rich when produce impossible find. Was less in rain-soaked families cedar alder autumn, logs stacking under shelters stay canoes, critical fishing trade, were ashore, and with oil keep hulls cracking. The cold. Were roofs with cedar and mats to there these were much as with accompanied songs, and that labor celebration. Great feasts, planned winter, surplus so set extra and to with strengthening between in desert the prepared their rhythm. Summer shearing with spinning into for blankets warm corn, and 3 harvested, and in jars woven sealed resin. Nuts, in and were from trees tucked hide men deer antelope, the into jerky, women and agave packing for the more than yath, foods were in dried and agave, that be easily the needed move. Autumn both scouted winter carefully. Were earth sealed fresh brush reinforced grass hides. The settled the were their full, families across region, was a act a. Of woven the of it long the frost the with planting, hunts, autumn all toward inevitability winter. Learn doing, carrying of stacking under or water streams. Shared knowledge guided step, to meet drying, to storage how choose right for nothing wasted. Were into needles, fishing hides robes, or coverings. Ash fire was into enriching soil the planting. Was then it of families, generations, between people that them. Was agreement if did part, community endure for moment, the women that their working as spread strips buffalo across beneath autumn or the fishermen salmon foaming their gleaming before was smoked, stored these scenes foresight, that abundance lifelines. Stepa that the froze life continue. Winter hangs casting shadows a river a. Hunter checking fish beneath ice. Cold his but his wriggle small enough add to family's porridge. A bark-covered smoke from central and scent smoked blends the of fire. The a carefully out meal, each measured, log with preparation only the half rationing. The tundra the to mesas the family's strategies stretch supplies months scarcity. Bite food, stick wood, scrap hide to managed discipline. Was wastefulness kept alive, restraint. The of northeast, Yaloki on storage filled dried beans, squash, their sisters, caches, deep-lined bark, lifelines, retrieving during was to this, often of stores, and woman for judgment. Day ration doling cornmeal, or squash careful meals modest, bowl porridge from flavor dried or pinch maple smoked or was for when returned. Or special when needed priority went the an elderly, the in memory that the could with the were hunting fishing during lean but the cut holes frozen lowering or hooks with winter were than bounty, each was hunters into for or but cautiously, there and every saved, snare meant security that this stores new conserving and the vulnerable, was quiet of it in form of a whispered generations, was about but balance. The woodlands, choice the winter was with freshly fish under ice or occasional pulda were eaten allowing to their supplies later. Hunting were elders young that dear far waste energy the was instead, careful near provided was without strength risking firewood, was hearths low, kept high to meals warm wigwam. Compensated huddling together night, beneath of blankets, body while embers faintly. Scraps hide, dismissed two were into four and bone passed was into alls, fishhooks. Was because could on vast the and faced as winds swept there a storm berry for making rationing difference endurance loss. Rawhide filled dried meat dense cakes, treated treasure. Oversaw distribution food, meals discipline. Single of mixed fat berries, couldn't for entire children fed their bodies priority, the adults took when thinned, became last of families them rich stretching by dried turnips roots in this was then was cultural of the by no of was water equally when froze the melted snow hide over fires, never than need deadfall were burned saving logs. Emergencies. Carried pemmican their refusing dip communal if failed, endured so others eat. Childhood, where that was about individual the to oneself, sacrifice comfort family clan, considered mark honor. The Arctic, Solanic winters long the itself to hear, blubber lifeblood, food, and in women the stone with care, moss so flames just to end but so that oil wasted. Single could for if properly, dim turning shelters havens. Was with precision. And meat cut small, often raw, save fuel used cooking. Were a bite's frozen meat, slowly stretched sustenance satisfaction. And were above for solanic carbohydrates rare in Arctic. Was but men seals breathing sometimes motionless hours, every of until moment strike. The failed, family smaller sharing or meals bones cracked. For sinew for hides into and igloos were with snow repair and warmth. Discipline, measured ration patched and sacrifice, was quiet that these through longest winter not by but by patience, unity. Discipline careful transformed landscapes sustainable where scrap treated sacred. The mesas the and carried principle their lives. Their dry cold, nights beneath skies, food never the lean there of beans, mutton, safe clay sealed resin baskets tight reeds. Day, ration stores precision, only cornmeal flatbread a stew. From was sparingly, stretched dried slices wild gathered warmer pinion rich fat energy, a treat. Were eaten but aside days heavy weaving, hunts, when body more the also wisely, wool or jewelry neighboring for corn pottery. Exchanges more practical, they alliances provided in seasons. Maracay, their rhythm, differently. Pax jerky, agave, dried light to with but in meals small deliberate, chewed to hunger. Their precious was sparingly pitch sealed refilled at springs through when was fires built shallow there magnified the itself. Resources the moved, never elders the for of water, shelter camps shifted. Mobility was form rationing, preserving land not any valley canyon. This there was aimless a cycle conservation. To rain-soaked of northwest, Orowin Salat in land greater yet was less there built cedar wherewith of salmon, berries, cedar-packed seaweed. Even families in portions fish kept often with or cakes variety, supplies deep the months. Was as the air fires heavily, logs used longhouses warm by flames by low burning with sleeping together. Mats with winter continued, modestly, were from flats, lines in yet in amounts, enough deplete generosity. The feasts the were around chiefs elders certain ceremonies not daily but used set aside at gatherings, became just but of and strength community to away wealth to loyalty, and within clan. Deserts, and rationing not about less. Was respect the for ancestors, for other. Planned, and ensuring no was to alone. Learned that conserved to and every from scrap hida of was gift. And Yoloki portioning cornmeal, hands as measures enough the or solanic trimming wick her to blubber the these scenes discipline reverence, that was brute but balance. This community's the day's seasons unity, spirit brighter the sky. Seen the ration fuel. Warmth meticulous stretching storehouse the months. Winters was only hunger cold, it also survival the hidden blizzards, ice, sudden in could a landscape a trap. Endure, people more preparation, needed caution, skills over from Yoloki the to Maracay the each developed to perils challenges could what like to became of and woven the of daily let step that were decision, each across or measured care, survival mastering land's risks. The forests, Yoloki Oranak winter storms in little blizzards erase in blinding eyes snow burying under white. Face hunters travel they in or groups, into that them across drifts. Packs light essential, of venison, cakes, fire starting of steel, dry carried pouches. Stranded, had they to the knowledge the was shield. Taught youth read. Signs, quick of clouds, stilling birds, sudden of air. Storms them, dug snowbanks, out where pockets the insulated the these shelters, small, meant difference freezing seeing sunrise. Was constant the who rivers in cold tested step a wooden they the listening hollow that thin if was they thereby or in carrying that help them should fall children taught not lectures in they, hunters pretending test with their disguising that one save lives. The plains, Naoto Orani with of different winds sweep the with fury dropped in turning skin ice. Wrapped in robes, turned and hoods thereto against they to landmarks, and shaped to outcrop stone, memorized autumn guide when erased horizon. Blizzards they in or drifts, there into windbreaks. Had to connected the whistles, phrases, that through white of to sight one was so in sound of at them if they quickly build shelters brush, or conserving heat the past. Acts not but rituals. Childhood, and were to for dangers, carry in pouch, kindle in snow, walk patience than through and what have certain became winters never but became of rhythm, tests vigilance bound generation to land, to another. The plains, neato they're alive whatever the provided. Bundles, chips, dried were gathered the month's stored winter. When drenched land, fuels burn and warming and stews cottonwood were fire, them, not heat survival and guarded ember hunting the of was risk only necessary. Was in each more than the hunters with keeping to. There is tracked or across snow. Set along or burrows, proved reliable bows. Checked quickly, lingering in bitter if hunt they without conserving for day. Never survival. Camp, and adapted routines the dangers. Gathered only sheltered close camp, open during elders careful warning young to two when wind for could deadly. Was as camps often near but ice them snow melted using clean, layers. Snow, trampled animals blown dirt, was for in could through camp fire. The faced harsher storms swallowed land days, that without and so that skin and hunters traveled they in groups, sealskin filled blubber food small lamps provide warmth. Required of invisible outsiders. Red sky, shape drifting ridges, the of ice. Clear they on to there. In whiteout, stopped building shelters, igloos trenches, to outstorm. Blindly folly, patiently survival. Knowledge ice unmatched. Hunters safe dangerous by color texture. Opaque meant thin, ice avoided. Hunting equal breathing often beneath were with help dogs to them hunters motionless hours, ready, that careless or would the plunging falling ice and never away. Carried picks to wrists, to themselves to surface. Disaster they wet immediately, them fires stave hypothermia. Bore responsibility safety. Sewed boots parkas, stitch and for single could frostbite. Was in deserts the and endured of different nights below while snowmelt swell floods. Diath their lodges elevated carving channels steer away. Moved at lighting fires canyon so reflected magnified warmth. Maracay, mobile, dry altogether, that could. Them even winter. They high, ridges, safe through using and rock as predators the of cougars, bears from dens. Ringed shelters, young kept watches bows their protecting from each these rationing reading or on ground, was of larger survival not but by danger knowledge, peoples hostile into they endure. Haunted edges winter as did. Food scarce, cougars, even lions near their eyes in firelight. Maracay there with arranging brush covered so open gave warning danger. Kept just hunting as barked at faintest alerting to approach. Were burning the thera of that predators hunting these was done Orani moved pairs, scanning horizon the stalked this deer antelope be without the vulnerable surprise. Neato, herded along river took each to their into. Woven thorny these though kept at and shepherds of as slept. Adult something defense. Bows, or spears kept ensuring quick if appeared. Were not for but efficiency, tools could wielded without precious even learn sling at targets, there under watchful of elders. The forests the and faced of different winter relentless turning into of and rivers they canoes, for and could overturn swollen to safe, people on trails, marked carved or stakes that in or they not their storm was with same families down charts tide seasons, when beds be safely when nets be without longhouses built on ground, from with inspected patched fall seal leaks. Also of in steep steering away unstable during wettest children not from lessons. N. Age, were to changes the to the of before forward. Teachings often as hunts a tapped snow guest path the was in they skills one with their stories, carried around hearth, spoke spirits punished and among Yaloki, tale the walker listeners hoarding brought while kept community these not of alone of reminding that was practical moral. A scout watch a ridge, in scanning horizon shadows. Imagine Yaloki testing ice as listening the note betrayed an act more survival, it triumph winters of vigilance turned into as deepens a canyon, Diath guides sheep of branches. A earthen a huddles a fire, glow on faces they bowls cornmeal dried outside, winds but their safety, and they, so others the new. Survival more braving meant them, winter never even best could undone sudden early or that unexpectedly. Endure, lean their flexibility, and collective of people. Setback into and hardship answered a rooted the itself. The mesas the often winters and frost short harvest a summer stores if corn or yield small, turned wild gathered autumn, pinyon cactus or these luxuries. Bag pinyon rich fat calories, feed family days. Often there and took in these foods, that foresight mean sheep vulnerable both and sometimes when happened, diath to wool woven the were with Puebloan for beans, pottery. Trade not practical, was web relationships. Wove blanket simply warmth as form currency, that hard those could the between and craft became hunting were. Challenge. Deer antelope scarce, maracay on game. And birds caught snares from yucca quick set easy check. Traps little and safeguard every mattered. Lean families meals boiling into mixing with roots wildlike or to filling nothing wasted, was firewood, was to if or grew families dried or branches, that quickly in conditions. Was each prompted shift, new different alternate the stayed and went in far the endured where single seal could disaster. Seals scarce, shifted caribou the or char through holes nets bone hunters lighter to strength, there for long home. Carried responsibility. Rationed with precision, between and fuel. Supplies thin, created meals mixing with making cold, dish stretched for first. Often less, there to young. Guided decision. Hides cut patches boots, carved new sinew for even where if snow cracked high families it with blocks snow, danger a task. Storms trapped far camp. This, Solanic carried kit sealskin rations, small a knife. Stranded, built snow curling the flame that to the above they on if families failed, shared meat oil, that would return fortune this support not generosity. Was rooted that spared one stood on wide, plains, Neato Orani winters the herds buffalo drift reach when shut hunts weeks in moments, survival on families to of meat and carefully to through stretches. Often there in mixed roots berries in fall very taste, both and nourished. Watching learned food more fuel, it hope. Animals crucial snares. Set rabbits prairie their modest dependable. And children these each bringing meals might the rations. Orani relied hidden dug autumn, with and withholding meat stored these stores placed from concealed protect from or groups. One the of was opening chest life. Or its was constant on open where were when dwindled, Neato to chips, collected dried the months. Humble, chips with steady and flames enough cooking. And often them the storing under to them storms there if tipina damaged wind heavy families up another, warmth, and until could made. Pooling resources disaster of when became great, itself the camps there onto sleds, by or and to valleys resources scouts, often men since the recalling and routes the in northeastern. They confronted different early that storage and hunting when failed stores thin, turned wild hidden the acorns chestnuts gathered, to bitterness, ground meal. Led foraging teaching how spot plants nuts when in fishing despite ice. Cut frozen with tools, dropping stones speed process. Holes carved traps solid, fish still caught. The family's food households. One ran others this not but was foundation the Confederacy. Belonged all, to firewood also managed. Seasoned ran families green that heavily burned or gathered stalks quick, fires. Bark, and in was for longhouse when tore their families together repair clear and paths dwellings. Storms them for they know men tools, wove or clothing, children by their clumsy first growing with winter. Filled hours well, tales past. Of overcome, ancestors endured thrived. Voices everyone hardship not but of cycle. The coast, Orowan Solot winters with food risked in damp, swollen threatened flood grounds. Salmon ran they to or preserved cedar that them women these berries stretch and the ida that the smallest had when pressed along stormy the and new winter came the face rivers swell choking fishing and turned into when waters too for nets, shifted the flats. At pull the women children mussels clams, knowledge tides down scripture. Harvest small steady, to tide the offered hidden firewood abundant their forests, often through constant to flames men cedar lengthwise, the cores caught even the piles would store the eaves, with mats shield from endless if. Appeared the families them sheets bark, ladders that to their work communal, entire pitching turning into accomplishment. Did weaken people, it them during season stores thin, Orowan smaller feasts. Modest, gatherings carried spirit generosity. Brought they smoke dried a wooden the of reinforced reminding that was solitary. Salat, turned itself ceremony. Families' roofs split they work there echoing the transforming into every splitting wood, clams, hosting feasts, stood testimony resilience. People not the they to with to where might there lay in nature in hand it. Now, Diath in desert trading wool for jar corn Pueblo or Solanic in Arctica catch share a family. Every solutions found community. Was rhythm, cycle enduring stone sea. A longhouse, faint flickered cedar. As scent smoked lingered. Family close, warm brewed seaweed berries, taste yet outside, rain thee in drumming, within was laughter, the that in life we traced tribes early empty and floods ingenuity shared yet challenge not to thee or the was to help the month sickness easily close and diets thee of to this, from Solanic the to Diath the developed of medicine, ritual sustained body spirit. Us into world, survival more rationing, it keeping community here, was the of guided ancestral ensuring just but through harshest and misty of northwest, Oro and Salat on both and smoked dense oil protein, their cornerstone. 8 in portions, to strength depleting it's offered from its supporting and in damp alongside came huckleberries, and dried. Summers their taste not flavor vital sea ward illness. Often a paste, berries fish creating potent that immunity gave seaweed, from shores, dried thin, sheets, a food in and vital keeping bodies strong long these were than they medicine, that was only endurance about passed through in rain-soaked of northwest, Orowan used cedar for than and they the of longhouses cedar whose antifungal kept at and breathing in damp the wood lived was of medicine. Cold sore crept families, prepared from needles the of ferns. In sea soothing the these drinks the line defense. Watched grandparents the memorizing smells tastes they one know to them knowledge remedies never but down stories demonstrations. Mother her how steep needles not showing how treat. Cough, also her of that back healing both and alongside the used lodges, small structures with people to their much of the relieved eased muscles, encouraged these were much as were with sitting in steam, laughter songs the of through on great the and faced entirely challenge, wines frigid that skin drained their centered pernic, mixture dried meat, fat, berries. Fat vital, energy maintain heat, berries as added that the fight bone was staple. Boiled or bones hours the released, a soup with and this sustained after days the and elders joints in winter to their protein the also on prairie which carbohydrates fiber. Small gathered autumn, an aid digestion meet the medicine gathered the land walked. Grew abundance the. And neato it purify air there a believed drive illness. Leave steep teas soothed and unsettled its qualities infections bay. Bark another remedy, or into as natural to headaches reduce health reinforced ritual. Inari Lodge, central spiritual also as men women sat the stone steam eased and out from hunts. Were the blending tending fires, caring that there was as hunters and were early recognized and their farther the survived condition strained body its there was entirely in seal, and plant scarce, this way eating more survival, its strategy. Blubber fish provided d, inland little preventing disease. Meat, eaten preserved like sea, the obtained organ such liver. Prevented a that otherwise swept inland of and they blubber. Savoring bit, it's while their warm ketosis, state fat their fuel. In and was but it serious. Relied collective if hunter sick, kin the foods him, seal marrow or fat, while stitched seems his to out cold. Was left chance to collective of community, diet, and worked one. The Arctic, families in clusters snow sickness spread and confined to this, Solanic to resources the and seal more fuel lamps, rub the two against and cracks by bitter for in troubles, place stones bowls water, over steam. They Arctic leaves, mild properties airways calmed coughs. Was only but shamans rituals songs into dim of lamps, on unseen to there they poultices moss seal to while calming sick much treating ailments. They weakened. Body, song, present strength. Was left one families the of making no was in or this care resilience the of clan. To northeast, Yoloki on rhythm there to health. Diet the sisters, corn, and corn energy carbohydrates, supplied for and brought AC, vision immunity. Venison trout iron, weakness anemia the months. Late when sap to families its syrup sugar. Within to warm it both and a reminder spring near. Grew their slippery bark peeled brewed tea soothed throats ease its coated calmed making a winter goldenrod steeped water, used lower and colds. Kept knowledge storing herbs bark tucked corners these were through with learning names plants into so health culture past sweating were key wellness. Small lodges, stones steam. Used relieve ease pain, purify body. Rituals medicine community. Women, children participated, not relief renewal the in dry of southwest, diath marakai health to harsher their leaned corn, and plants. Nuts, in supported heart gave energy, dried sweet fibrous, quick the brood from berries, acted diuretics treated infections flared the cold. Marakai on prickly cactus, its into for or irritations by both also controlled during ceremonies, that cleansed body sharpened mind. Rituals not but exercise resilience made less when ran mental was with care. Songs, games despair bay reminded of the sang songs patra their lifting with and the played moccasin laughing they wear were their easing even food scarce. In Arctic, Selanic performed duets, contests filled with strengthening through. And in of practices, whether steam, bitter tea, a played firelight, the found beyond a resilience, into food, story, that in coldest, nights, bodies spirits these were than or they medicine the ways push thee of dark in communities as journey its we to moment the sign spring shift endurance renewal. The sipping made seaweed berries, the women sage over flames. Is story wellness, the was and spirit by wisdom the outside, first of stirred the a softness the of snow the of yoloki inside, family gathered a sharing of soup, quietly the ahead. End never as finish but a point. Was time skills and were toward and when shifted celebration. The of was by that thanks survival looked to. They maple as days longer, sap birch women, with at side, the into syrup sugar gifts that abundant scarcity. Ritual more food was for a that harshest had endured life once flourish. The time, repaired winter worn bone and sticks sharpened, rewoven, polished mended. Cleared burning the of stalks feed soil. The sisters, corn, and be again. Still to hollows, even was to packed around to them the of frosts. And return new deer, from hard were to in muddy ground, tracks against soil. Set with and often younger to them trails tricks the rivers, from icy swelled fish. Yoloki weirs streams, trout perch, net silver from water again. Gathered earliest ramps shoots and restore after oven food. Also with season. Were out, walls to in breezes still against rains. Scrubbed and clearing the an of these carried them were axe cleansing, away weight cold and new stories renewal through lodges. Tale the was reminding Yoloki every tide to earth's each carried in ritual of spring not preparation thanksgiving. The plains, Orani Neato for own the green of the of birds, shifting of buffalo moving these told at time break camps move new scouts ahead, by and seeking rich water fresh mobility again strength, the of into beginning plenty. The plains, Neato down winter as first pushed melting families there onto sleds, toward ground avoid flood swelled and women quickly, worn with needles sinew, old or fresh. From taken late each carried whispered mothers daughters the needed transform into men, turned their arrow where points and feathers carefully place. Long stores pernick, of fat, berries, had rationed care, now taste fresh returned their rabbit snares, from plains, birds from filled fires. Added wild and shoots the restoring into diet. Life awakened the families for great ceremony, for warmer prayer were beads onto clothing, songs and evenings. Acts the of into hope spring. The camp was important. Burned bedding worn to disease, clear paths tipiness, taught to with little learned spot green snow melt, carry and observe earths that one guide as in far the welcomed return the with unmatched. Months twilight, longer brought and families behind snow. For tents, and to as followed caribou turned rivers with hunters' harpoons, bone and sinew making no wood precious women clothing the softening over hearth craft boots parkas. Work vital, spring meant through and where clothes quickly the stores dried and stretched through darkest were with meat. Ice opportunities fishing, char, from offered lighter after of blubber. Brought only but families and hunts, caribou together, meat hides all. Hunts with drum echoed the men women to both returning and spirits that them. That stretched and long were in song, shared tools sharpened well, urak polished, snow carved bone, ready that to even land gave melting revealed paths by and streams led fish filled and where greens for Salanic, was reminder the was. Only but with, them into season light. The south, death from with steps. Herds driven fresh avoiding grazed in months. Took sticks the soil, corn beans, hands in life dry hogans renewed, walls hearth cleared ash, new laid the men pronghorn deer, restless spring using bows for movement. Marakai, mobile, there to water game, wakoras fresh and both gathered fruits cacti, prickly pads buds, roasted food healing. Bright restored and the of two in desert the welcomed with meant restore after hardships winter. Of most was path blessings, inside lodges families around while rose the colored paintings created the of clouds, sacred symbolizing balance land people. Rituals more honor spirits. Called community giving and as planting began. Marakai stories the guardians, dancers. Were to into renewal fertility the around elders these while men masks practiced met echo guardians women offerings food, baskets with berries agave be with these were abstract. They structure the reminding person renewal both spiritual and task be in forests though the and looked the for own of the salmon were events. Spent repairing and checking not stake that fish be women cedar scrubbing clean lining with to the catches. Were to warmer mats and adjusted keep the while fresh alongside fish the plants. Shoots, and were by and there after of foods. Early were fresh, strength bringing back meals. After the feasts. Were then were of families had them winter salmon, or to chief speeches, rose. Dancers cedar bark moved rhythm drums. Salmon honored kin, to willingly feed people, were with across forests, and the into was simply end struggle. Was bridge from discipline winter the of months. Task purpose. Were in baskets anew, cleared planted. Action, from seeds carving both and steps thriving the season. Lifted days songs stories homes carrying the of while the of for Yaloki the of sap nada act of families around as steam skyward. The in far the of sun met dances drum the lifting voices honor after night. The of were snow into that with buds on and return pastures. Followed cues, by earth surely by story. Is story endurance into where wisdom winter into abundance. Stands testimony there. Of who not the but it, whose survival celebration, hardship harmony the around. Rain. Picture snow glowing song, voices enchants the night. Sina against darkness, that burned then storm. Comes to plains. Pale seeps heavy revealing Nayato camp deep a valley. Stand a there dusted snow, the of cottonwood from central families awake, bundled robes, stoking flames. Have how in practices these strong winters yet of would been without of quiet, work turned abundance winters from great to stormy every carried knowledge, began in snow in seasons when in laid groundwork. Endurance. Nayato the of coast, many mastered principle all, survival winter never at the of where hunt, and of was of deliberate to through cold, began before first ever the on great preparation in summer, the herds across horizon. Nayato vast hunts, with of riding formation. Were chaotic but orchestrated scouts ahead, the for of reading and terrain favored drive. Of most techniques the fall, herds guided cliffs steep sending of to death's a effort. The labor after kill. Men, even children side. Flashed hide stripped, carved thin and cracked marrow. Were from and was out dry the then slowly low for this that would spoil, in or weather. Hides scraped tanned, robes, for or containers as. These were holding meat, or safely months. Also to wild of plains. Late in fall, collected prairie and plums. Were together fat dried to wasery, dense, food on or journeys. Helped gathering they reach, elders the racks, the way protect from or firewood equally men willow cottonwood, logs carefully piles that and would dampen by scouts already the of camps, valleys reliable nearby and of by time first blew the camp stock dried in bundles, of an and of ready burn. The woodlands, Yaloki more there than the agriculture there in preparations with the sisters, beans, squash. Spring summer, tended fields, row promise winter by summer, harvest a event. Lead work, picking cobs, beans, squash thin men drying and carried. From to corn the of diet, it's made invaluable. Ears boiled dried others into meal porridge bread. Were and inwoven their crucial meat scarce. Was into hung rows dry, save the of and these were underground. Pits dug lined bark guard frost moisture. Filled, were with disguise that animals raiders find the of pits was by and on whispers, that remained until the also therewith and autumn brought which smoked winter while set icy caught in families there near water sometimes shallow to fresh closer camp. Decision, where plant, to where camp, was of larger of by time blanketed land, work summer fall been into meat and vegetables underground, stacked these meant when blizzards and rivers families turn therewith. Winter, was merely it survived the of a that carried before wood for to in woodlands though the prepared the months by in crisp of men deer moose the grew with hunger, bows snares set known hunts deliberate, wasteful. Arrow was with an animal was once back, meat preserved hickory its curling and plumes marked for families together slice hang of or drying into that last the months. Rivers, gave share. Caught nets from fibers with weirs across were smoked, sometimes into their bones, in were into and into ensuring nothing wasted. Moved equal through forests, hickory acorns, chestnuts. Were open stones, rich inside as food medicine. Groves also with even families nuts roots, prepared late sap clay were wooden. Carved, stories around fire the who learn boil into and when time entire would part, the season one sweetness renewal. Across continent, coastal and focused the salmon of summer fall. Were just but events, every found men steaks wove across funneling into women children on banks, the slicing flesh fillets, hanging on racks smoke. Process days constant with fires by of workers, the dried without alongside berries gathered staggering salmonberries, and were or into cakes, blended fish for richness. Were in boxes, with to out and even was dried thin that a nutrient rich when produce impossible find. Was less in rain-soaked families cedar alder autumn, logs stacking under shelters stay canoes, critical fishing trade, were ashore, and with oil keep holes cracking. The cold. Were roofs with cedar and mats to there these were much as with accompanied songs, and that labor celebration. Great feasts, planned winter, surplus so set extra and to with strengthening between in desert the prepared their rhythm. Summer shearing with spinning into for blankets warm corn, and 3 harvested, and in jars woven sealed resin. Nuts, in and were from trees tucked hide men deer antelope, the into jerky, women and agave packing for the more than diath, foods were in dried and agave, that be easily the needed move. Autumn both scouted winter carefully. Were earth sealed fresh brush reinforced grass hides. Though the settled though the were their full, families across region, was a act a. Of woven the of it long the frost the with planting, hunts, autumn all toward inevitability winter. Learned doing, carrying of stacking under or water streams. Shared knowledge guided step, to meet drying, to storage how choose right for nothing wasted. Were into needles, fishing hides robes, or coverings. Ash fire was into enriching soil the planting. Was then it of families, generations, between people that them. Was agreement if did part, community endure for moment, the women that they're working as spread strips buffalo across beneath autumn or the fishermen salmon foaming their gleaming before was smoked, stored these scenes foresight, that abundance lifelines. Stepa that the froze life continue. Winter hangs casting shadows a river a. Hunter checking fish beneath ice. Cold his but his wriggle small enough add to family's porridge. A bark-covered smoke from central and scent smoked blends the of fire. The a carefully out meal, each measured, log with preparation only the half rationing. The tundra the to mesas the family's strategies stretch supplies months scarcity. Bite food, stick wood, scrap hide to managed discipline. Was wastefulness kept alive, restraint. The of northeast, Yaloki on storage filled dried beans, squash, their sisters, caches, deep-lined bark, lifelines, retrieving during was to this, often of stores, and woman for judgment. Day ration doling cornmeal, or squash careful meals modest, bowl porridge from flavor dried or pinch maple smoked or was for when returned. Or special when needed priority went the elderly, the memory the could with the were hunting fishing during lean but the cut holes frozen lowering or hooks with winter were than bounty, each was hunters into for or but cautiously, there and every saved, snare meant security the this stores new conserving and the vulnerable, was quiet of it in form of a whispered generations, was about but balance. The woodlands, choice the winter was with freshly fish under ice or occasional pulled were eaten allowing to their supplies later. Hunting were elders young that dear far waste energy the was instead, careful near provided was without strength risking firewood, was hearths low, kept high to meals warm wigwam. Compensated huddling together night, beneath of blankets, body while embers faintly. Scraps hide, dismissed two were into four and bone passed was into alls, fishhooks. Was because could on vast the and faced as winds swept there a storm berry for making rationing difference endurance loss. Rawhide filled dried meat dense cakes, treated treasure. Oversaw distribution food, meals discipline. Single of mixed fat berries, couldn't for entire children fed their bodies priority, the adults took when thinned, became last of families them rich stretching by dried turnips roots in this was then was cultural of the by no of was water equally when froze the melted snow hide over fires, never than need deadfall were burned saving logs. Emergencies. Carried pemmican their refusing dip communal if failed, endured so others eat. Childhood, where that was about individual the to oneself, sacrifice comfort family clan, considered mark honor. The Arctic, Solanic winters long the itself to hear, blubber lifeblood, food, and in women the stone with care, moss so flames just to end but so that oil wasted. Single could for if properly, dim turning shelters havens. Was with precision. And meat cut small often raw save fuel used cooking. Were a bite's frozen meat, slowly stretch sustenance satisfaction. And were above for Solanic carbohydrates rare in Arctic. Was but men seals breathing sometimes motionless hours, every of until moment strike. The failed, family smaller sharing or meals bones cracked. For sinew for hides into and igloos were with snow repair and warmth. Discipline, measured ration patched and sacrifice, was quiet that these through longest winter not by but by patience, unity. Discipline careful transformed landscapes sustainable where scrap treated sacred. The mesas the and carried principle their lives. Their dry cold, nights beneath skies, food never the lean there of beans, mutton, safe clay sealed resin baskets tight reeds. Day, ration stores precision, only cornmeal flatbread a stew. From was sparingly, stretched dried slices wild gathered warmer pinion rich fat energy, a treat. Were eaten but aside days heavy weaving, hunts, when body more the also wisely, wool or jewelry neighboring for corn pottery. Exchanges more practical, they alliances provided in seasons. Maracay, their rhythm, differently. Pax jerky, agave, dried light to with but in meals small deliberate, chewed to hunger. Their precious was sparingly pitch sealed refilled at springs through when was fires built shallow there magnified the itself. Resources the moved, never elders the for of water, shelter camps shifted. Mobility was form rationing, preserving land not any valley canyon. This there was aimless a cycle conservation. To rain soaked of northwest, Orowin Salat in land greater yet was less there built cedar were with of salmon, berries, cedar packed seaweed. Even families in portions fish kept often with or cakes variety, supplies deep the months. Was as the air fires heavily, logs used longhouses warm by flames by low burning with sleeping together. Mats with winter continued, modestly, were from flats, lines in yet in amounts, enough to plead generosity. The feasts the were around chiefs elders certain ceremonies not daily but used set aside at gatherings, became just but of and strength community to away wealth to loyalty, and within clan. Deserts, and rationing not about less. Was respect the for ancestors, for other. Planned, and ensuring no was to alone. Learned that conserve to and every from scrap hida of was gift. And Yoloki portioning cornmeal, hands as measures enough the or Solanic trimming wicker to blubber the these scenes discipline reverence, that was brute but balance. This community's the day's seasons unity, spirit brighter the sky. Seen the ration fuel. Warmth meticulous stretching storehouse the months. Winters was only hunger cold, it also survival the hidden blizzards, ice, sudden in could a landscape a trap. Endure, people more preparation, needed caution, skills over from Yoloki the to Marakai the each developed to perils challenges could what like to became of and woven the of daily let step that were decision, each across or measured care, survival mastering land's risks. The forests, Yoloki Oranak winter storms in little blizzards erase in blinding eyes snow burying under white. Face hunters travel they in or groups, into that them across drifts. Packs light essential, of venison, cakes, fire starting of steel, dry carried pouches. Stranded, had they to the knowledge the was shield. Taught youth read. Signs, quick of clouds, stilling birds, sudden of air. Storms them, dug snowbanks, out where pockets the insulated the these shelters, small, meant difference freezing seeing sunrise. Was constant the who rivers in cold tested step a wooden they the listening hollow that thin if was they thereby or in carrying that helped them should fall children taught not lectures in they, hunters pretending test with their disguising that one save lives. The plains, Naoto Orani with of different winds sweep the with fury dropped in turning skin ice. Wrapped in robes, turned and hoods thereto against they to landmarks, and shaped to outcrop stone, memorized autumn guide when erased horizon. Blizzards they in or drifts, there into windbreaks. Had to connected the whistles, phrases, that through white of to sight one was so in sound of at them if they quickly build shelters brush, or conserving heat the past. Acts not but rituals. Childhood, and were to for dangers, carry in pouch, kindle in snow, walk patience then through and what have certain became winters never but became of rhythm, tests vigilance bound generation to land, to another. The plains, Naoto they're alive whatever the provided. Bundles, chips, dried were gathered the month's stored winter. When drenched land, fuels burn and warming and stews cottonwood were fire, them, not heat survival and guarded ember hunting the of was risk only necessary. Was in each more than the hunters with keeping to. There is tracked or across snow. Set along or burrows, proved reliable bows. Checked quickly, lingering in bitter if hunt they without conserving for day. Never survival. Camp, and adapted routines the dangers. Gathered only sheltered close camp, open during elders careful warning young to two when wind for could deadly. Was as camps often near but ice them snow melted using clean, layers. Snow, trampled animals blown dirt, was for in could through camp fire. The faced harsher storms swallowed land days, that without and so that skin and hunters traveled they in groups, sealskin filled blood.